You know those paint colors that everyone recommends? Maybe even me. But maybe they shouldn't. I've been in the color game for a while now, and some colors just don't hold up the way you'd hope. Whether it's overuse, tricky undertones, or just feeling totally uninspired. These are 5 colors I've officially stopped recommending in 2025 and what to use instead. Some of these might surprise you, but trust me y'all, there are better options that can give your space more personality, warmth, and longevity. If you need a little more color inspiration, check out our palette pyramid service where we create custom color palettes for you based on your needs, your wants. Whether you need a 3-color palette, 6, or even more, we can accommodate you. And as part of the service, I even send you a personalized video explaining how the colors all work together. People love them. We're getting more and more demand. So while my workload is still manageable, check the link down below and secure your palette pyramid today. Okay, so let's get into these colors. The first one is Edgecomb Gray. Wow. The overused safe neutral. Now this is a color I have recommended to a lot of people over the years, but now I'm not so sure. If there was ever a paint color that played it a little too safe, it's Edgecomb Gray. It's a warm grayish that's been a staple in countless homes, and I get why. It is quite versatile, neutral, adaptable, and works in a variety of spaces. But here's the problem. Edgecomb Gray can feel a tiny bit, muddy in certain lighting. In rooms with low natural light, it leans a bit dull, and in really, really bright spaces, it can sometimes feel washed out or even take on a slightly pinky beige quality that wasn't really part of the plan to begin with. If you want a color that is supposed to work in all situations, and it doesn't end up working for you, that's really disheartening. Another issue, it's everywhere. Homeowners looking for a fresh, current feel might be disappointed because Edgecomb Gray doesn't really bring a distinct personality. It's a fine color, it's a great backdrop, but why settle for fine when you can have something better? So what should you use instead? Well, my first recommendation would be a color called Natural Cream. This is a warmer, softer alternative that still works in a variety of spaces, but feels a little more fresh to me and less expected, and there might even be a hint of greenage in the mix. Just a touch of it. The next color is maybe a tiny bit riskier, but I think it could be well worth it. It's Benjamin Moore's Pale Oak. If you want something light and neutral with a touch of elegance, this is a great alternative that doesn't feel as generic, but it does have that peachy quality that can sometimes show through. So just be a little mindful of that. Okay, the second color I'm no longer recommending to people this year is Ultra White. Ultra White is a bright, crisp white that can make a space feel fresh, modern, and clean, especially on things like trim and doors. But I find Ultra White has a serious issue. It's blue undertone. And this is exacerbated in north-facing rooms or spaces with cool lighting in general. It can make the whole space feel very cold, sterile, clinical, and just lifeless. Definitely hospital vibes. If you've ever painted a room with Ultra White and thought, why does my house feel like I'm in Ward 3, if that's a thing in a hospital? That's why. It's because Ultra White just has that blue glow, which admittedly eliminates any potential of it being warm, like too warm, but we like warm now. I got the warm lights on in the studio, we're feeling great. White paint in general can be tricky because the undertones matter more than you think, and Ultra White is one of those colors that looks good on a swatch, but can backfire, especially when it's on 4 walls. So here's what I would use instead. Absolutely, my first choice would be Super White. This is a great middle ground color if you want a clean white that isn't as blue toned as Ultra White. Maybe there's a little bit of gray mixed in, but it is subtle, it is clean, and is one of my all-time favorite whites, period. Another alternative is Simply White. If you wanted more of a soft, inviting white that doesn't feel cold whatsoever, this is one of the best warm whites out there. It's not warm enough where it's going to feel creamy or yellowy. Even though there is a touch of yellow in it, it is more subtle, and I think especially when used on the trim, it almost always works for me. All right, the third color that I'm no longer recommending is Hale Navy, the dark blue cabinet cliche. I know. Hale Navy is a fan favorite. It's a deep, rich blue that looks incredible on cabinets, on accent walls, even home exteriors, believe it or not. So why am I done recommending it? It's because everyone uses it, especially on kitchen cabinets. And at this point, it's starting to feel very predictable. In fact, it felt pretty predictable 2 years ago even. While it's a great color, it's become the default dark blue choice for a lot of people, and I think it's time to mix things up, especially if you're looking to redo your cabinets this year. Another issue, Hale Navy leans a little cooler, which means in some lighting, it can read a bit too cold or even muted and shaded. If you wanted a bold navy, there are better options with more depth and a little more uniqueness as well. So the first color that I'd recommend as an alternative is actually not too much of a navy. It's called Nocturnal Gray. And I find this color to be very classy, sophisticated, definitely more teal leaning, but I think it's a choice that fits alongside Hale Navy, but goes in a clearly different direction that makes it feel a little more fresh. And if you still wanted more of a true blue, I would take a look at Newbury Port Blue, a slightly lighter navy that has the same impact as Hale Navy, but feels fresher and a little more uplifting to me. Not as heavy. Number 4, Cement Gray, the lifeless cool gray. Cool grays have had their moment, but that moment is over. We talked about it recently. Cement gray is one of these colors that can make a room feel very flat, cold, and uninspired, especially in spaces without a lot of natural light. The problem with cool grays like cement gray is that they lack warmth, obviously, and this makes them harder to style. You pair it with the wrong furniture, or especially the flooring, and suddenly your space feels sterile and outdated and just very much banal. So what I would recommend instead is a color like Wish. If you want a gray that still feels soft and elegant without going too warm towards beige territory, this is a very great middle ground. And then my second option is one that everyone should be familiar with. It's Balboa Mist, a lighter, airier alternative that won't weigh down a space like cement gray can. Balboa just has so much flexibility. It does a great job at connecting the dots between cold and warm neutrals. Number 5 is Stonington Gray. This is a color that I'm no longer recommending to anyone in 2025 because essentially it's a duller gray owl. If you've ever debated between Stonington Gray and Gray Owl, let me make this easy. Gray Owl, to me, wins every time. Stonington Gray is like the more serious, less fun version of Gray Owl. It leans darker, more gray, and can feel a bit heavy, especially in those smaller spaces. If you want a light gray that feels fresh and modern, there's going to be better choices out there. And the first recommendation I would make is Wickham Gray, which essentially is the lighter version of Stonington Gray. So as a color, it's very similar in how it's composed, but it's lighter, it's softer, it's airier. Most of the time, Wickham Gray just wins out against Stonington because it just feels a little more low-key. And then, of course, I gotta recommend Gray Owl because it's still one of the best, most versatile light grays that works in almost any space. If you're not ready to hop off the gray bandwagon, then Gray Owl has to be one of your go-tos. Let me know in the comments, do you agree? Have you used any of these colors this year and loved them? Or do you have your own color you think should be retired? And that's it.